Finally, we reached the Bay of Whales, where Little America was located in 1928, and again in 1933, and again in 1939, and again in 1946, and then on to Kainan Bay, 24 miles farther to the eastward, where this picture was taken. Here's another picture of the bay ice looking down from the deck of the ship, where we're unloading planes and tractors and helicopters and all kinds of equipment to drag it 5 miles inland to where the new Little America was built in 1955. Here's the old man on ice patrol watching the bay ice, because if it breaks out, we'll be in trouble, and that did happen very shortly afterwards. Then we had to bring the ships in against the edge of this great ice cliff, the Ross Barrier, and unload upwards, which is very difficult. This picture shows the ship tied alongside in danger of falling ice, unloading great tractors and all kinds of equipment, planes and cases, thousands of tons of supplies uphill, where they will be dragged into Little America number 5, 1955. Here are some of the tractors, and in the rear, one of my Signal Corps shelters with the instruments in it that I was using that winter. This picture shows my camp called Coal Bottom, with some of my vehicles and shelters from a distance, and Dick Handy there, the son of the famous Ed Handy, is taking that photograph. Here's a better view of it. The antenna leading out to the bamboo pole at the left got time signals from WWV, both on all frequencies from the States almost every day. The trail in the distance is where the vehicles are traveling back and forth from the ship up to the main base at Little America. Here's a close view of our crew in 1956 at Camp Coal Bottom, the Signal Corps Research Base, a mile from the main base of Little America 5.
Bud, I'd like to interrupt for a moment and read here in the National Geographic magazine, which tells what you're doing.
Now that you've read that, here is a view down one of our holes in which we measured at 40, 300, and 400 megacycles, talked a mile back and forth through solid ice and made all kinds of measurements which still stand. This is my pet weasel, and in the distance, the antenna poles and anemometer measuring poles that we used in deep freeze number 2, 1956 to 7. 5 years later, I went in there looking for my base and couldn't find it, nothing left there but a pole. This picture shows the captain of the Glacier and I examining Little America 2 in 1960, many, many years after it was built. Notice the steel towers are buried. You'll see pictures of those in a minute. Now we go back in time for a brief view of that olden day. I first went down as chief radio operator of the Bear in this slide. This shows her farther south than any other ship I ever got. The next slide shows the camp of Little America as it looked in 1928. The 3 towers that carried the radio messages back to the States. I'm sure you remember the call letters. And here's all we found when we visited there in 1946. One of the steel towers was still above the snow with the wind generator still on it. Recovering that wind generator, we cut up the propeller blades and gave them to various prominent people as gifts. I still have one in my possession, one of my more valued artifacts. This is Little America as it looked before the snow drifted over it. This is Little America 2 in 1933. Down inside, we sent you broadcasts every week. This is Charles Murphy and Guy Hutchison, both of them very much interested in radio, running those CBS broadcasts every week. And this picture shows Admiral Byrd at the microphone. And here we have the Knights of the Gray Underwear, led by Dr. Earl Perkins of Maine, Alphonse Carboni, the Marine cook, and he was a good one. And I'm in the background with a mandolin in my hand. As the weeks went by, it became necessary to send a weather station out into the interior. And here we start talking about Admiral Byrd's famous advanced base. This group are planning the trek. 17 tons of cargo were to go on dog teams and tractors, first time tractors were ever used in history successfully, to the mountains 500 miles away, and there set up a little building. Here are some of the tractors pulling sled loads of dog food and man food, and with the people living in tents out on the trail. Here are husky dogs as they traveled with us on that trip. This picture shows the rough ice just south of Little America that we had to traverse, and it took us 10 days with those tractors to go 5 miles. Here's what I looked like back in those days, pounding the key inside the tractor cab with a little transmitter, a 2-watt job inside of a grape nuts box, package of Camel cigarettes, and a tool bag on the floor. Oh, here's a next picture, please. Here's what the National Geographic said about us, if you can read that small type. Now this next slide shows a picture of one of the coils from my little home-built transmitter as it now rests in the museum up at Holcomb, New York. This scene shows the roof of the advanced base shack, which we have built 125 miles south of Little America. When the weather got so cold at 62 below zero, the husky dogs could no longer travel. The Admiral radioed to us, "Establish the advanced base where you are," and then he flew out there to take up his lonely vigil throughout the 7-month-long winter night that was approaching. Here he is saying goodbye to us as we left him to go back to Little America for the winter. The next slide shows the sun coming up at 5 minutes of 12 and setting again 5 minutes later on the last day of sunlight that we had for the long winter after we got back to Little America. Those 2 wires overhead are one of the 600-ohm feed lines to one of our 3 great rhombic antennas that carried our communications to the world. Hello, America. This is Little America calling from the bottom of the world. KFZ in the Antarctic. Remember? We spent the long winter months of the Antarctic winter night carrying out the projects that would prepare us for the next summer's activities on the trail, exploration, 22 different disciplines of science and so on, and kept ourselves in trim by studying 3 or 4 hours a day in the library, as you see here, and working outside. This picture actually shows me chopping up seals for dog food. Each dog got 1.5 pounds of frozen seal meat per day to keep him happy. And we relaxed at night with motion pictures. We had 90 films at Little America, and at first we saw 1 a night, then 2 a night, then 3 a night, until finally we'd seen 42nd Street 37 times, and there wasn't anybody in the audience that couldn't get to the lips of the heroine before the hero could.